I call this meeting of the Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been duly called and that this notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Good evening to everybody and Happy New Year. Glad to see everybody here. I'm back for a brand new 2022. And I'm going to read the public comment statement. Tonight, the Board of Trustees is meeting in a called board work session. The board welcomes and appreciates comments and input from the community. Open forum is provided at each meeting to allow the public to address the board. There will be 2 open forums tonight. Open forum number 1 is to hear requests regarding agenda items only. Open forum number 2 is to hear requests or make comments regarding non-agenda items and will be heard at the end of the meeting. Those addressing the board are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes per meeting. The speaker should identify his or her name, group affiliation if any, and make a brief presentation with an identified solution if one is sought. Remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole. Oral presentations may not include charges against any employee or board member by name. It is my responsibility to determine if the person addressing the board has attempted to resolve a concern informally or through the district's complaint policies. If not, the speaker will be directed to follow the appropriate policy. The board requests that all presentations be made in a courteous, respectful, and professional manner and asks that speakers monitor their own behavior. If you wish to speak during one of the open forums, please fill out one of the cards located on the table in the entry hall. Mr. Chapman, any comments?
The only thing I have as comment is included in your packet is your COVID report for 12/13 through January 9th, ending at 12 noon.
Okay. Any need for any clarifications? No. All right. Awards and recognitions. We're Ms. Hollander, Government Finance Association and Association of School Board Officials.
I don't know, say something again.
Would you like me to just speak loud?
Yes.
Okay, once again, for the 16th year in a row, the Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District Business Operations has received the ASBO's Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting for the fiscal year that ends in 2020. And Janice, if you will make your way up here and stand by me as I read these accolades. Our Business Operations Department has also, once again, received the Government Financial Officers Association, GFOA, of the United States and Canada, and they've been awarded the Certificate of Achievement of Excellence in Financial Reporting. The school district is awarded this based on their annual comprehensive financial report, again, finishing August of 2020. HEBISD has once again met the high standards. Thank you. Met the high standards, which includes demonstrating constructive spirit of full disclosure, quote unquote, to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to read the report. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in this area of governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government and its management. So congratulations to HEBISD Business Operations, Janice Hollingsworth, her team, and of course, Debbie Williams. And then in parentheses, I'm going to say David Garcia, because he was here for a portion of that. So Janice, thank you. Mr. Chapman, would you come up and...
Yay!
Okay, and I'm going to grab my phone.
All right, Janice, we'll come over here.
Those are heavy. There we go. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
Congratulations.
We do not take these awards lightly, and I know that their department works very, very, very hard in making sure that our district is completely transparent. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That's one of the things that I know this board takes a lot of pride in, is the high level and high quality financial reporting and just everything about our business operations is top notch. So thank you so much for everything you do. We are ready for open forum number 1. Ms. Hollander, any cards for open forum number 1?
There's not a card in the box.
Okay. All right, we are not going to go into closed session at this time, but we are going to move item 5.05 down to the second closed session. We are down to item 7.01, disbursements for the month. Are there any questions on disbursements? All right, district benchmark assessments. Dr. Norgard.
Good evening. I have not been able to give you a DBA report since last year, so I am so excited to kick off 2022 with reading DBAs for grades 3 through 6. It's not clicking.
We're excited to have one.
But we're going to stay on the title slide just to, ta-da! As with all of our DBA reports, this is interim data that's going to lead us towards our quality indicators and strategic plan for MEETS grade level and master's grade level on STAR. Some context and a little walk down memory lane. You may or may not recall, last year in January, I brought to you a first ever DBA 1.5 report. Last year in the fall, when DBA 1 is typically given for elementary reading, we had some technology issues that we had to halt the testing. Grades 3, 4, and 6 were in the middle of that testing. So we had to halt, come up with a different plan. And replacement assessment was given in January so that our teachers had data. We knew in that year it was very important to have data move forward, but it was also finding a balance of, do we shut down another day, take this instructional time? So the test was constructed a little differently. I have a reminder slide for you, but that's why we named it 1.5, because I knew last year we could keep it straight, but when we get to this year or 2 years from now and we're trying to look at trends in data, we need to remember that there was something different about this test last year. So, it did go, okay. So it was shorter because we gave it in a single ELA block instead of a 4-hour shutdown. Here's some examples of what a full STAR would have been versus the DBA 1.5. But it did not impact grade 5, so you will see DBA 1 in the 5th grade data. It's picky whether 2 clicks, 3 clicks, we'll see what it takes. We did also make some adjustments to this year's test, DBA 1, because of the state's move, which will be fully implemented next year, of this integrated reading and writing test, like we've been talking about. But for this year, the state is introducing field items. So the items that count towards their score are those reading test items. But our students will be asked on this year's STAR some writing questions, some revising and editing, some responses of that type. So to best simulate this experience, because that's a lot of what our DBAs do, is give our students that opportunity to practice their pacing, et cetera. Our coordinators did add some revising and editing field items to this test. So it was a little bit longer than maybe a previous year's DBA because they needed an extra passage to read and do the revising and editing. So we used those as field like they would for STAR. They didn't contribute to right or wrong score of the test, but because it was an extra passage and more to read, it may have had an overall impact on student performance compared to previous year because it was a little bit longer. It took a little more stamina, but that is what they'll need when they get to this year's STAR exam. 3 is the magic number, apparently. We do have students testing in both English and Spanish, but in all of our trend data, we take that combined data that's blocked out there at the bottom, and that's the same block that you'll see here at the bottom. So that's our combined results. You can see that we've had lots of things happening in our DBA with different groups of 3rd graders over the years. So I actually did our up or down mark. You see I grayed out last year's DBA 1.5, and I was comparing to those pre-pandemic performance of DBA 1 in 1920, which was also a year we had new TEKS. I tried to capture absolutely everything on that slide. A lot has happened in elementary ELA over these last few years. So actually at meets and masters, we are up compared to third graders testing in pre-pandemic, but we are dropping from those pre-pandemic scores at approaches. So we'll look a little further into our data. These are our performance objective targets based on last year's third graders' performance. So none of these years are really complete yet other than 18-19. If we look all the way back to 18-19, that's that typical pattern that I talk about where we see in reading we grow. DBA 1, DBA 2 star. You see those set of bars get higher for each cluster of scores. In 1920, we did see a very large jump from DBA 1 to DBA 2, but we didn't get to give star. And then last year, there's that gray bar to represent that DBA 1.5. And some unusual things happening last year, like we grew between DBA 2 and star at meets, but not at approaches and masters. So we need to get back to this year. We should have all three data points, see that accelerated growth as we did in 18-19. Because this is the first star testing year for this cohort of students, I don't have, here's how they did on last year's stars or last year's DBA for you at this time. So as we move into fourth grade, again, you can see the numbers we're going to carry forward in the trend there at the bottom, the combined results. So these are down from the last time we had DBA 1 data in 2019-20, which was down the year that we introduced new TEKs other than at approaches. There are several things happening here. And you know that we look at the data both ways. How have different groups of fourth graders performed, but also how has this group of fourth graders performed over time? And we'll get to that cohort slide in just a minute. But there are a couple of things happening in fourth grade. We have talked about fourth grade for a long time. Our students really seem to struggle, and we still look for those reasons why. But in addition, this group of fourth graders had some other compounding factors that we'll talk about when I get to that cohort slide. So a couple of things happening. It's actually a small drop at masters, a little more at meets and approaches, but we don't like to see 2 years in a row of red. So we need to look at this group and come up with our plan. And these are the performance objective targets based on last year's fourth graders. So again, we can see from the last year we had all the data, the growth. This was not as much. So fourth grade has kind of struggled. The pattern does not look the same at fourth grade over the years as it does with others. Now here's this group of fourth graders. So I can show you what they did in third grade, but I want to back you up for just a minute more and think about when these students were second graders. Because we talk about K2, we are learning to read, and then in third grade, we start reading to learn. So the last third of their second grade year, they weren't with us. So there when we were solidifying all of that learning to read instruction, they weren't here. They come in as third graders. They start their third grade year virtually. Many of them stayed virtual the whole time. So in this transition time from learning to read to reading to learn, there were definitely some gaps there for this group of students. So that being said, when you look at their trend across their third grade year from DBA 2 to star, that DBA 1.5 is in gray, it's there, but it's not informing quite the same way. It was really kind of flat. A little bit up, a little bit down, but not big jumps like we typically see from a DBA 2 to the star exam. So this group was struggling in that transition to the learning to read, reading to learn transition. So that's something we're still working on. That is why we've talked before about introducing more phonics instruction all the way up to third grade, because we need to be sure we're catching all of those things, that we've really solidified those skills before we move into the interpretation. Now, it is typical to see a drop as we cross into a new grade level, because they took third grade star. That's ending on their high point. Here is the culmination of my third grade year. Here's how I did as a third grader. Now I'm a fourth grader. Our skills in reading do spiral. I'm working on main idea. I'm working on theme. I'm working on author's purpose and craft, different things like that. But I'm doing it now on a fourth grade DBA. The reading passages are written to a higher level because they're written for fourth graders. The standards may be higher. The passing standards do change from grade level to grade level. There may be more items on the test because the number of items change from grade to grade. So that's why we typically see that drop. And then once we get them into fourth grade, we start growing. So you can see the trajectory of where they need to be to meet our end of year minimum end-of-year targets. And really, they did perform at about that level as third graders. So we need to see that they continue to grow and as fourth graders can achieve at that level. But overall, fourth grade is something we've had our eyes on for quite a while and continuing to refine. But there were kind of two sides to the sword in this case, both what's happened in fourth grade and this group of students.
When is fourth grade DBA 2?
I'm sorry. March 30th, almost April. I was close. I try to keep all the dates in my head.
That's
We
when
do
we'll-
have our elementary ELA coordinator here.
So that's when we'll know if the things that we're trying to do to improve are actually taking hold. And
We'll also have, and I've already started preparing for you, my very next report to you is our map, which is that new data point, which actually gives us even more data on our third through sixth graders. So we've got other things we can look at as well. And of course, the teachers doing that progress monitoring. But yes, we definitely need to have our eyes on that data. So here's fifth grade combined results. Fifth grade did have a DBA 1 last year, and it dropped from pre-pandemic norms, but we're seeing nice recovery this year, looking at how this year's fifth graders are performing compared to how last year's fifth graders are performing, and really it approaches and meets almost right back to those pre-pandemic standards, and at masters even higher than we were pre-pandemic. So these are strong numbers in fifth grade. These are our performance objective targets for this group of students currently in fifth grade. So I have 2 full years of traditional data. I can look back to 18, 19, but I can also look at last year, and this is what we typically see, that, DBA 1, DBA 2 to STAR. So we can see the size steps we need to make. We're going to be anxious to see that DBA 2 data when it comes in and see that we are on track to meet these minimum incremental growth. So I have even more history on this group of students, because instead of missing the end of their second grade year, this group of students missed the end of third grade when they would have had their first STAR experience, and they didn't have one. But you can see they were on that typical pattern. I'm growing from DBA 1 to DBA 2. We just didn't get to see how high they would have grown with STAR. But again, like we talked about before, kind of flat. Last year was a flat year for a lot of our students, where they came in and how they were able to perform at the end of the year. So I'm encouraged to see that from the end of fourth grade to the beginning of fifth grade, there's not that dip like we talked about with fourth grade of, but now you're testing at a higher grade level standard. They've pretty much maintained at approaches and meets. They were flat through the year, but they came in still performing at that level, and so we have a higher point from which to grow moving forward. And their master's actually has continued to grow for their last couple of assessments with us. Sixth grade, we only test in English, so these are our combined results. We are down. I wish I could maybe represent the magnitude, though, because that arrow for -1 is the same size as that arrow for -5, but otherwise you might not be able to read it. So those were actually, and again, they had a DBA 1.5, so I'm comparing those down 5, down 1 is to pre-pandemic performance. So really relatively strong performance from our sixth grade compared to what we've seen in some others, and these are their performance objective targets. Again, can't really see the same pattern every year because there have been so many different interruptions. I have a lot of history on my sixth graders. I can look at how they had that straight up line in third grade, dip down to start the fourth grade year. They were right back up. So this group has had that very typical pattern. We're going to grow, come into the next year's grade level standards, grow. So we are looking at this group and the targets that they need to meet this year and see this kind of growth that they have shown us for 3 years of history. So what are we doing to respond to all of this data? I mentioned early on the phonics work that we have to continue to push that into upper grades. It doesn't all happen in K2. Third grade in particular is where we're really targeting with some new Hegarty materials, bridging the gap to really support that so that they are ready to make that transition to reading to learn. Classroom discussions are specifically targeting some academic vocabulary, not just we talk about things in class, but how are those same words used in a STAR type exam. Let's be sure that our students understand that level of vocabulary. And short constructive responsive have been added to the curriculum. Again, that's that writing side, but this type of writing is going to help with the reading comprehension, because what these short constructed responses are asking them to do is respond to a text. Read a passage and respond. So they need to go into the text and find that evidence. So that's really where we see the writing and reading coming together. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have that map mid-year data that can also be used to further refine intervention groups and needs for our campuses. Questions about our elementary reading DBA?
Any questions?
Got a few questions.
Okay.
Dr. Norgard, looking at the number of Spanish students from 3rd to 4th grade, there was a drop from 104 to 20. Is that because they've tested out? And in 3rd grade, they may have been testing in Spanish, but in 4th grade, are we seeing the transition between 3rd and 4th grade?
When you say tested out, there's two things that can happen. We can talk about exiting the bilingual program and moving into English, but there are students in the bilingual program that test in English, and that's based on their performance in the classroom. Every year, starting at kindergarten, they receive a little more of their instructional minutes in English, and so there are tests that they're doing, and as they're looking at TELPAS data, committees are deciding for each individual student whether they should test in English or Spanish. So both things may be happening. They may have completely exited the bilingual program, or more likely they are still receiving bilingual instruction, but they are now testing in English.
Okay.
Because we got to have them all testing in English by 6th grade.
And we 3rd grade reading is just about where it is. That's a very important component to what we're doing here in educating students. I mean, 3rd grade reading is so important. And I think we all know that, and we all know these numbers aren't where they need to be. Have we been able to determine, with our interventionists, with our programs that we have, with our reading academies, are we to a point where we are seeing where some of those are working better than others, or do we need more time?
Where some interventions are working better? I want to be sure I understand your question.
And the question really is, I want to make sure that we have given you all of the tools that you need to do what you need to do. And as we're moving into the next budget year, is there anything that we're doing that we've recognized this was a great idea, but it's not what we're going to continue to do? Or, hey, this is what we really need to be doing. We haven't asked the board for it. Is there anything out there that you need, pie in the sky, that a tool that you would need?
I appreciate that. I would say right now, and I'm looking at Leanna, our English Language Arts coordinator, and also one of our Reading Academy cohort leaders is sitting next to her, because you mentioned Reading Academies. That is definitely something that we will see that over time. We need to get all of those teachers fully trained. It's a 10-day training, and so as we have more teachers that have been all the way through that training, that's going to move instruction. We hear so much positive feedback, but last year in our first year, we trained administrators as required under House Bill 3, but we only trained 2 teachers per campus, and this year, half of their K-3 teachers. And actually, any instructor, anyone on the campus who offers instruction to kinder through 3rd grade teachers. So, our advanced academic specialists, we have librarians, we have different groups that are experiencing that. So that's going to take time to see, but I think this year, by the end of the year, we'll have really achieved a critical mass with that, because we'll have at least more than half of our K-3 teachers through that training. We have added materials, the Hegarty, et cetera. We may have further discussions separately. I don't necessarily want to put Leanna right on the spot right now, but as far as other materials we need, I feel like a lot of them, we've got the things in place. We need to work the plan. Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
This is kind of a little bit off topic, but as we're expanding again this year, our full-day pre-K, are we going to be keeping our eyes on that and see how that might help numbers in the future?
We are, absolutely, and this is kind of perfect storm, or we almost created our own perfect storm, because while last year y'all approved the adoption of new pre-K materials, we're waiting to implement them into that first year of the all-day, because we didn't want to have this group is getting this kind of curriculum in the all-day, and this is getting here in the half-day, plus it gave us an entire year to really dig into and develop what does this new curriculum that we're rolling out next year, so we'll have all of our programs all day. There's going to be new training on new curriculum that we can now look at this history. And we do assess in pre-K, and we are looking at some additional or different assessments that give us a little deeper data on each of those students and what their needs are.
Yeah, I know it's, at this point, I guess 4 years out, but it'd be interesting to.
Now, the earlier we start it, the better better we'll be, for sure. Anything
All right,
else?
any further questions? Thank you, Dr. Norgard. All right, now to ESSER 3 compliance update, Dr. Harrington.
All right. The ESSER 3 grant requires stakeholder input be gathered every 6 months. So we gather and review that data, and we've been reviewing the data quite often with this grant, but there has to be a formal review every 6 months. So I just wanted to share with you, an online survey was sent out. We sent the links to all parents and staff, selected high school students. All the principals received the link, plus there was discussions with that group, and then the DLIC had a discussion on the ESSER grant, and then they also received the links. We received over 1,200 responses. The responses,
What percentage is that?
we sent, I think, if I talked to Dave earlier today, I think it was close to 30,000 links were sent, but some people would have received multiple links, but there were around 30,000 links sent. I do think the feedback, the consistent feedback was with, we got a lot of staff replies, principals, DLIC. They sent a lot. But again, 1,200 responses. I think survey, where's the end? Maybe 4,000 total on the district-wide survey?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So not as high as that, but still 1,200 was for an extra survey. I would prefer more, but that we at least got that information. So the survey was broken into 3 categories. So there are 3 categories that we looked at: academics, instructional resources, and in-school safety protocols. And so for the academic, you can see the main ones: small group instruction, interventionist tutors, social emotional support, special education support, support for non-English speaking students, family engagement, summer school, and Saturday school. So that's how they rank. So those were the options that were given. On instructional resources, the number 1 came back at curriculum support, then materials, technology devices, special education support, instructional software, and then in-school safety protocols. In-school safety protocols, so daily cleaning, providing easy access to surface cleaners, providing hand sanitizer, sanitizing buses between each route, providing COVID testing opportunities for students and staff, notifying close contacts of COVID-19, providing masks, providing vaccine information, maintaining social distancing, providing desk shields, and providing face shields. So, when we look at that information, so based on all that input, we looked at our plan will continue to focus on the following items. So additional interventionists, instructional materials, tutoring, translation services, expanded summer programs, social emotional wellness support, and technology needs. And I want to point out something that you may not see, but the reason is we have 2 other grants that we're also dealing with right now to provide all the services that we're trying to provide. So separate from the ESSER 3 grant, we have the K-12 testing grant, the K-12 COVID testing program grant. We have $2.3 million that we have been provided by TEA, and that is what has allowed us to have the testing center at Pennington. And so that's where we're offering, how we're able to offer the testing center. We also have a separate school health support grant. The school health support grant is an $880,000 grant, And we are using that grant, we're allowed to pay the workers of the COVID testing center. We can use it to order additional PPE, masks, and gowns. We've ordered hand sanitizer. We needed additional Kleenex. Oxivar, which is a chemical we use to kill COVID-19 on surfaces. We were able to purchase portable HEPA filters for the COVID testing center for the nurse's office. And then we bought additional of the ionization sprayers, the backpacks and sprayers that disinfect for COVID-19. So while those were high on the ESSER, we're already purchasing those with the other grants, so we didn't use that as part of the ESSER. So overall, at this time, we've seen very minor changes to the plan on the ESSER 3. We're going to continue to monitor the needs and evaluate the effectiveness of the programs we put in place. We're actually working right now on evaluating the summer school program, evaluating the pre and post data, evaluating the data of the kids who attended summer school, and then their early results on DBA 1. So we're going to compare those who did attend and not. So we want to make sure that what we do offer is providing what we want provided. We don't want to just do it because we've always done it. We want to make sure what we're doing is working. So that's the information I have for you right now on the the ESSER 3 grant. So do you have any questions on that? Yes, Fred.
So Dr. Harrington, just one quick question. You said in slide 3 that select high school classes. How were they selected, and about how many students do you think participate in the survey?
It was a different group, so I honestly don't know exactly. I believe last time it was the student ambassadors group. I believe this time it was a selected AP or IB classes, and I think student council was this time. So, but they usually, for this grant, they're just using usually 11th or 12th grade high school students. And then we have a few, it's not a lot, but we have students on the DLIC also that get the link.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Harrington.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're into quarterly investment report for quarter ending November 2021.
You read every one of them, right? All right, thanks. Great.
Close.
Good evening, Mr. Romero, Mr. Chapman, Board of Trustees, and welcome back, Debbie Bell. It's good to see your face. We're going to start off with the quarterly investment report as required by the Texas Public Funds Investment Act. We're required to present that to the board quarterly for approval. The report represents the types of investments held by the district, the values at the beginning and ending dates, and the reporting period, and the average yield to maturity. And I trust you've had, as Rochelle has, read through every page of that. And if you have any questions about that, I'll be happy to try to answer those.
Any questions on the quarterly investment report? And thank you for all your hard work again on this, Ms. Hollingsworth. We know it's
Yep, it's another Janice deal.
yeah.
And I do have to go back and say the GFOA award, that's all David Garcia for 2020. I had nothing to do with that. I'll catch the next part of the next. That is correct.
Yes.
So,
All right, so financial statements for the month of November 2021.
you gonna drive? It doesn't matter. Okay. Here we have presented for you the financial statements for the period ending November 30th, 2022. Again, I trust you've had a chance to review the detailed documents that are in your board packet. We will start with the general fund. The general fund had a ending fund balance as of November 30th of $122,983,210. That represents expenditures exceeding revenues in the amount of $19,886,131. And this kind of goes back to like it was at the end of last year when we're at a period of time prior to tax collections coming in. So our expenditures will exceed revenues until our tax collections start getting booked. So we will have this is end of November, we'll receive tax collection more at the end of December. Those will get booked in January, and then same thing, January, February, March, April, those will be our 4 big tax collection months. So that's when you'll see those start ramping up, and the revenues will definitely exceed expenditures at that point. Other than that, in the detail, you'll notice I tweaked this. I told you last month I might tweak this a little. I moved up there in the corner where it's got 3/12 of our budget is actually 25% of our budget for the year. So you can look at the detail and see, for example, with payroll, our biggest expenditure, that it's running 23 to 24% in almost every function, and that's, as you can see, is below the 25% for those 3 months. Other than that, the only big thing to point out in expenditures is the $129,919,000 transfer out, which was to cover the print shop deficit from the prior year, which that was an enterprising fund, and we shut that down as we would with any enterprise fund that is not taking, that's got to be self-sufficient. And with us moving to virtual with a lot of things and whatnot, that just became something we couldn't keep operating. So that's what that was. And you'll see that again here in a minute on the budget amendment. So go to the next one. The next one is the Wrestler report. I squeezed it in. I don't think you can probably read it up there. You might be able to on your screen, but it is also in your detail. And as you can see, our biggest expense is payroll. It's currently at 83%. That typically runs 87, 88% throughout the year. But at the beginning of the year, we're spending more money in new contracts, buying supplies, starting school, doing all that. So it skews that number at this time of the year. So it's a little bit lower than normal. Utilities, our second biggest expense is running 2%, as it always does. And I have to point out a typo that I have there. It's instructional supplies is only 1%, not 2%. That's our third biggest expenditure, instructional supplies. So that should be it, unless there's a question there. Go to the next one. The food service fund, it's doing very well. You can reference pages 8 and 9 of the financial details. You can see that fund balance is $7,941,000. Revenues are exceeding expenditures in the amount of $618,595. And as I say, they've just done extremely well. I think last Friday, Mariella had 79 total people out with vacancies, COVID, other illnesses, and other issues that she had 79 people out, but she still got her done. She just continues to do an amazing job. And today they had quite a few out this today too. So just holding my breath that as we move forward, COVID won't hit us so hard in food service because we're already so strained right there that. They are, and they've cut down on serving lines, which is, I want to say thank you to the principals at the campuses too, and the patience of the teachers, because we've had to cut down on serving lines, and what that means is it takes longer to get kids through and get them back to class, and it's just, it is what it is. They're just doing the best they can with what we have to work with. So, but Marielle's doing a great job. So, the next one. Debt service fund, fund balance of $16,192,739. That is revenues of $3,212,062 more than expenditures because we haven't really spent any money in debt service yet. Our revenues will be increasing as tax collections ramp up. Our first debt service payment of $7,687,283 will be due February 15th. So you'll see a big expenditure then for that. And then we'll have another second and final debt service payment, which is mostly all the principal and interest, $29,097,283 on August 15th. And those are our two really only big. We have a few other small expenditures out of that fund for service fees and whatnot, but not significant. Our total debt service for the year would be $36,784,564. Pre-K, CK, that continues to do well now that we're all back in school. The ending fund balance on that is a negative 203,173. We are 183,158 revenues over expenditures. Those revenues will continue to increase as we go throughout the year and collect those that income from people participating in that program. And it's doing well now that everybody's back in school, so we should get back on track with that fund. Next. Special revenue funds. Notice I don't really have anything up there because this consists of multiple funds of federal, state, local grant programs. You can reference pages 16 and 17 of the financials for the detail. All these funds are self-sufficient. We budget and spend what is allotted through the various grant programs, spend what we get, basically. Revenues currently reflected are greater than budgeted, as state and federal program revenues are not budgeted yet. We will be doing that pretty soon, right? Okay. Yeah, we typically don't do that until after we complete our audit, and so they're in the process of doing that right now. So that should look a little different next month. Nothing significant to report in those detailed expenditures at this point. Next one. Campus activity funds, like I say, it's kind of like pre-K, CK. Now that we're back in school, kids are fundraising. That's activities ramped up quite a bit. That fund balance is $3,172,980. Revenues over expenditures, $220,460. Not really a lot to say other than that students are getting out there and raising a lot of money, and they're spending a lot too. Spent $467,000 so far this year too. So, moving to the next report, bond fund, the 2018 bond fund balance there of $30,541,957. Revenue expenditures exceeding revenues by $2,732,559. We spoke about in the past, there's no new revenue in that fund until new bonds are issued, which we have not done and will not do for some time probably. The majority of the remaining expenditures are for the support staff building at West Hurst, which is substantially complete. So the outstanding things owed for West Hurst, some of the junior high campuses, some other, that it's basically retainages that we're still holding and trying to get that stuff all wrapped up and closed out. So we'll be spending more out of that fund as that happens. Next, the locally defined capital projects fund, $48,407,912 is the fund balance there. Expenditures are exceeding revenues by $23,373. This fund's really kind of quiet right now, and like the bond funds, no new revenues get put into this fund unless the board decides to transfer monies into the locally defined fund. So we may ask you to do that at some point down the road. Most of these funds are currently being used to finish up Oakwood Terrace, which again has some outstanding holdback and retention funds that will be going out at some point. And we are starting some of the new projects we discussed at the November 2021 facilities meeting, and those are underway. Some of them are underway, and some are beginning soon. So you'll start seeing some expenditures come out of this fund in the upcoming months. And that may be the last one. That is it. Any questions on financials?
Any questions on the financial statements?
I like the new format a lot.
Well, thank you. I'm trying to tweak it a little more and make it a little more easier to understand. So, thank you.
All right, budget transfers and amendment request.
Again, this is pretty quiet this month for budget transfers. The big one we talked about a while ago was $129,920 was for the print shop to cover that deficit for last year. There are a couple of other smaller transfers that are being requested for staff development, for curriculum staff development, supplies, and staff development. Some TPES training for the instructional leadership and for guidance and counseling. Some counseling, pay for some counseling overtime pay that we've had to pay. So nothing major there other than the transfer out of the general fund. So.
All right, any questions on budget transfers and amendments? All right, item 8.04, student computer replacement. Any questions on that?
I have some questions, Matt.
Okay, Scott's here, so he can help out.
Walk in, get put on the spot.
Hey, Scott, or Joe. Whichever. So, Joe, what is the total amount of E-rate funding that we're getting? Does it cover the purchase in its entirety?
Yes.
Okay. We're getting them in February. Are they going to be put into rotation immediately, or do we hold them until next school year?
They'll be used in rotation immediately because right now there's currently 1,700 computers, student computers that are over 5 years old. We'll just roll those in. These will be really instrumental in testing because the time we get them unboxed, imaged, ready to go. Start testing will start and we'll roll into that and just a slow replacement.
So are any of the students that have the Dell Latitudes going to be replaced with a Chromebook? And does that cause any disruption during the middle of the semester if they're working on a Chromebook?
No.
They move from the Latitude to the Chromebook, it's pretty seamless?
Yes.
Okay. After we purchase these, how many more laptops, student laptops that are out in circulation are still going to be 5 years or older?
In May, I looked at this earlier, in May we have approximately, let's see, what's 17, 400.
Is there any reason to bump up our purchase by 400 so we can make sure that we don't have any student laptops that are 5 years or older, considering this is all E-rate funding, it's not necessarily our money? Is there money that we could use from either technology bond or technology fund to purchase an additional 400 with this allotment?
We can certainly come back. I didn't budget that this time just because it was all E-rate funds and we kept it separate because of ESSER money and other things.
Is this maxed out?
This is maxed out.
That's
though,
what I
yeah.
thought, yeah.
You said it's maxed out?
This was maxed out, yeah, so
The number of computers we can buy under this purchase is maxed out?
this purchase, yes.
Yes.
That would make sense. Okay. When would be our next opportunity to buy? I mean, we're not maxed out for the year, we're just maxed out for this
This one.
this particular purchase, is that right?
From this fund.
From this one, yeah.
I mean, if we're so close, if we're only 400, I'd like y'all to give some thought to if there's a reason not to do it, you know, whether they're not in circulation or they're not actually in a student's hand, maybe that makes sense. But if we're only 400 items away from having no 5 year or more old laptops in students' hands, and 5 years seems to be the time where we make this transition. If it makes sense to go ahead and try to find some money to purchase that, so we can get all of our laptops 5 years or newer, I'd like there to be a discussion to see if that would make sense or if we can do that.
Let us review that and look at when that next group falls off and then possibly any during the summer and see if we can go ahead and get that in place. So we'll get those numbers and get back to you on that.
Okay, and is this rate still going to be in place for our next meeting? Because I see that it does expire tonight.
The bid?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, it will be in place.
Okay, very good. That's all. Thank you very much.
When you say it's maxed out, you're talking about we've bought all that we can buy with this E-rate money that we've been given, not that Dell's not going to sell us any more than this at a time.
We
Okay.
maxed out what we had on the E-rate.
Okay, so that's for keeping it separate, separate accounting, E-rate versus, our funds, basically, okay. And to clarify, these are gonna replace some more traditional laptops with Chromebooks, or are these
Yes.
just replacing Chromebooks with Chromebooks?
No, traditional laptops with Chromebooks, Windows
Okay.
laptops.
All right.
What are we doing with the old ones?
On the old ones, we typically sell them salvage. They get anywhere from $20 to $25 a piece. There's, on the Dells, it's 1,825 Chromebooks.
We've looked at some other avenues to see if we can generate any other additional funds on the salvage of these devices, and so far we have not come up with anything better.
All right, any additional questions? Still thinking about something, Andy?
No, I'm just thinking how much more money it would take to get to the 400.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Scott. Pre-K classroom furniture and materials. Any questions on that? We had received all this information in terms of the quotes and stuff, so if anyone has any questions. If not, we'll move on to Region 10 ESC Multi-Region Purchasing Cooperative Agreement. Any questions on this?
This is just an annual thing we have to do every year, renew this agreement, so it's part of the Region 10 deals.
All right, so we'll move down to our single action item, which is approval of the annual audit for the year ending August 21st, 2021.
Okay. I am not going to present the audit, but I do want to introduce Miss Sarah Dempsey with Tidwell, Weaver and Tidwell. She, I think y'all know who she is. She's been here many times, and she will be presenting our audit, which I think you will find favorable. Another kudo to Janice. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Yes, this is a good night for Janice. The GFOA award is usually, you receive it several months earlier, but this year with everything's delayed, even the GFOA award. So it came out while we were doing the audit, so we were happy to see that. The presentation just disappeared. Sorry. Oh, you're good.
I closed it. I thought that was Dobie's, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Okay, here we go.
All right. Well, thank you for having me this evening. Every year, I haven't done it every year. I've been on the audit for about 4 years now, but you have your annual audit, and this is the August 31st, 2021. The financial statements were reported to you monthly, so this is a look back at how things went. What we do is we take the financial information that is prepared by HEB and we audit those balances. So I'll go through and I'll talk about the audit process a little bit, the audit results. There's required communications that we have to have every year, and then some upcoming changes. They're similar to last year, so that's good, not too many more. So this audit, the interim work starts in August. We come out right before year end, and that's when we look at the internal control processes, make sure that everything is operating as designed for those key control areas, so cash disbursements, payroll disbursements, bidding procedures. We're going through and we're looking at the internal control processes in August. We come back in October, and that's when we're auditing the financial statement information as of August 31st, 2021. October is a very early start date, so as this audit went well this year, it has gone well in the past. You're starting your audit a lot earlier than other school districts, so not only is it a successful audit, but it's one that starts earlier than a lot of districts in Texas, so that's a good point to know. We do the audit in October, wrap it up in November, and then we're here today to present the final. We do the audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, the government auditing standards, as well as the uniform guidance, which is your single audit. When you expend over $750,000 of federal money, you have a single audit. So you're well aware that you have a single audit. We do a risk-based approach, so that is looking at where the financial statements could be materially misstated. So these are the areas that we focus. The revenue and state grant revenues and expenditures was a big audit item this year. We had 3 major programs for the single audit. The state aid calculation is changing as we're going through the engagement, so that estimate is evaluated closely. Construction in progress, payroll expenditures, those are the areas that we look at, cash investments, and that's where we're getting that third-party support. We're reviewing the reconciliations that are done at year-end and then pulling the backup that supports the numbers that you have in your financial statements. We also test internal controls. We don't give an opinion on internal controls, but they are tested, and then we test compliance with those major programs for the single audit. During that interim process, I went over this. That's when we're walking through the accounting controls, the transaction cycles, and then we're also doing our single audit. So here, we did the ESSER program was a major program this year, Child Nutrition Cluster, as well as the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which is the CRF up there. That made up 59% of your federal expenditures. You're a low-risk auditee. We're only required to test 20%, but there are certain programs that we have to test, and those COVID-19 programs were one of those. So we did get 59% coverage. We do compliance testing, testing over your procurement cards, and then cash disbursements, payroll, bids, and compliance. For field work, that's when we're pulling the backup, we're completing the single audit, and that's when we're expressing an opinion on the financial statements. We're pulling the support so that we can issue an unmodified opinion, or if we have issues, bring it to the attention of leadership. So for the audit results this year, it's an unmodified opinion. That's a clean opinion. There were no material weaknesses to bring to your attention over financial reporting. There are no significant deficiencies noted in the report as well, and then no non-compliance that was material to the financial statements was caught during the audit. For the single audit, it's an unmodified opinion, so that means that ESSER, Child Nutrition Program, and Coronavirus Relief Fund were tested, and they were an unmodified opinion on compliance. A low-risk auditee, no material weaknesses, and then again, no significant deficiencies were noted during the audit, and no findings that were required to be reported. So that's the best audit that you can receive. That is not an audit that we have been having. We do a lot of school district audits across Texas with these grant funds where, it's hard to account for all of them correctly. So we've had quite a few findings this year. For the audit communications, we issued our an unmodified opinion last week. And then other items to point out to you, no fraud or illegal acts were detected, no unusual transactions, and then this year we implemented GASB 84. And that really almost added an income statement to your agency funds, your student activity funds. It used to just be a balance sheet, and they basically added an income statement. So it's nothing that is really major as far as when you're budgeting or looking at the financial statements. It's not a significant change, more of a reporting change. Management's judgments and estimates are evaluated. That's your net pension liability, where you're getting a third-party report from an actuary. We just make sure that those judgments are reasonable, and any other estimates would be brought to your attention as well. The state aid calculation is one of the larger ones. No difficulties were encountered. We're not aware of any management consultations with other firms. And then our firm is independent as well as our team. Another good point for the audit is that there were no audit adjustments. So what that means is when we receive the financial information from business office, we did not have to make any changes to it. We did not find an error that was material and had to ask for an adjustment to those financial statements. And then the big upcoming change is leases, but it really doesn't have too much of an impact on the district. It's more for other state and local governments. There aren't too many leases that school districts have. So this might not be a really big effect, but the change does come into play next year. And then that also incorporates IT subscription arrangements, but that's the following year. So definitely want to thank the business office. We have to ask them for a lot of information. Janice knows. I'll say her name again. We really appreciate them being ready for us. It's a priority when we're out here. Our questions are answered very quickly, and we really appreciate it. Is there any questions for me?
Thank you so much. Any questions on the audit? Yeah, I just want to say again, thank you to Ms. Hollingsworth and thank you to the business department. We can get in the habit of taking this for granted because we hear it every year about how good everything looks and what great shape we're in. But we know that that's not completely normal around the state. And we talk to enough other school board members that we know the kind of troubles that school districts can get themselves into if they don't have the great team that we have. So, thank you to Mr. Chapman for putting together such a great team, and to Mr. Williams and Mr. Garcia, and all the way going back to Miss Ressler, and the common person through all that is Miss Hollingsworth. So.
Right.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this is an action item, so I will accept a motion.
I move the board approve the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended August 31st, 2021, as presented by Weaver and Tidwell LLP.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the board approves the comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year ending August 31st, 2021, as presented by Weaver and Tidwell LLP. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, we're ready for open forum number 2. No cards. All right, then we will move on to other business. Does any board member have anything they'd like to place on a future board agenda? All right, item 11.02, review of board activity chart. Looks like things are pretty well covered. The only thing that I see on here for January is the PTA council meeting. I know you're going to take that? Okay, so I'm going to put a circle down for Mr. Campos to attend the PTA council meeting. All right. So at this time, we're going to go into closed session pursuant to Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Section 551. The board will adjourn to closed session for the purpose of Section 551.071 to 551.074.
Thanks for being here, Debbie.
Yes. Thanks for filling in for us.
We'll try to be quick for you, okay?
Swing around, pick you up. Okay. I'll pick you up, no problem. I'll have her text you. I have to check in with her on,
Debbie, nice to see you. Welcome back for a night. Getting the band back together.
Tell you what, we couldn't be more excited to have her back.
That's good. I'm glad you can fill in. Really back in. Don't go too far. Don't go too far.
ATV.
Board is reconvening into open session. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.
You don't even need it. You didn't even need it anyways. Okay, perfect.
You gotta invite me over to lunch, so I can go check out your place?
Anytime you're over there, let's go.
Okay.
Come on down, I'll treat you to lunch.
Ooh.
Dang, I'm coming.
Man.
We all
Yeah.
tomorrow.